don't have much of a race anymore, based on what I'm seeing on television. Senator Cruz is just about mathematically eliminated.
You proved once again there's no place like home. You won in every region of the country, from the north to the south, to the east, to the west, but this one's personal.
And you know what? The people of this country and the people of this state truly are great and amazing people.
And speaking of people, it was a huge night for people who supported Donald Trump in New York, that Donald winning the Republican primary in a blowout.
Look at that.
He got more than 60%
61%.
of the vote. John Kasich finished second at 25%. Ted Cruz came in way behind at 14%. Meanwhile,
All right, Hillary Clinton got almost 58% in New York. Bernie Sanders, 42%.
all right, now it's up to me to bring in Ed Henry. Ed has been working the Clinton camp and the Bernie Sanders camp and the matchup as well as the Trump situation.
It's a good look for you, by the way.
Thank you very much. Somebody just emailed me and said I look like a spy.
That's what I mean.
Dan rather left his coat last time he was here. But
I'm sorry.
Ed, let's talk about the Clinton camp. When we popped up at 9:01 last night on the Clinton camp, what we heard is too close to call. But man, that switched quickly.
It did switch. Some of the exit polls had this at a 4-point race. Clinton 52, Sanders 48 at the very beginning, and that's why Fox didn't immediately call it. But then other precincts obviously came in that were very pro-Clinton. This was all but a knockout punch. I mean, let's face it. Yes, there are more states. I'm on the way to Philadelphia in a couple of hours. Pennsylvania votes next week. A lot of delegates there, too. Pardon me, but the very bottom line here is that Bernie Sanders needed not just a win, but the Clinton camp have told me they've run the numbers. Sanders had to win by 13 last night to have any chance to run the table and get the delegates. Said he loses by 15 or 16.
Wow. Sure.
He's upside down.
Here's the problem for Bernie, and that was the fact that he has so much support with the millennials. The young people, not even close when you look at them head to head.
Sure.
But unfortunately, they're just getting interested in him right about now. They had to register to be a Democrat to vote in the primary months ago, and so they didn't get to vote. They weren't up on the board last
Dude,
night.
I forgot my registration.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, in all seriousness, I was at Washington Square Park last week, right around NYU. 27,000 people. They disputed the numbers. There were a lot of people there. But
How many of them were registered to vote?
Some of them are not registered. Some of them are registered, to be fair, but back home with mom and dad in California, Florida, or somewhere else. That's what I did when I was 18. So, you know, bottom line is Bernie Sanders gets the crowds, but as we've seen in not all the states, he's won many of them, but in many states, he simply hasn't gotten those people to the polls.
He's also upset, and he speaks about it. He talks about the purging problem here in New York. There were 126,000 votes, people who were registered, that it didn't count because the Election Commission had sent out paperwork to their houses and said, are you still in existence? You have not voted in the last... Yeah, because they haven't voted in the last 2 elections, and they didn't respond to those mailers.
One aspect of that is you have African-American leaders demanding an investigation because they believe it was unfairly targeting African-Americans. Well, Hillary Clinton has a big edge with African-Americans. So if that happened, maybe she had an even bigger win.
But she's in trouble in this respect. If she tries to push him out, she could alienate the young vote, number one. And number two is she stayed till June against Barack Obama. And they were trying to push her out. So she would look like a hypocrite if she's trying to push
I'll give you a little scoop on what someone very close to Bernie Sanders told me last night. They haven't said this publicly yet. We'll see how it plays out. But that one of the things he wants to negotiate, he doesn't want to be vice president. That's obvious. He doesn't want to be, he's not going to be Treasury Secretary. Breaking news. But what he wants is to end the superdelegates. He wants to be the guy that says to the people, I'm bringing the party back.
Wow. That would be terrific.
This is what I'm hearing from someone very close to Bernie Sanders, that he wants to eliminate superdelegates. He wants to be able to take the delegates and the votes he has and the people power, frankly, to be able to go to the convention and say, you can't ignore me. There was a revolution here. We're not going away. And we don't want party bosses deciding this.
Can he do that?
It doesn't mean that it won't work for Bernie Sanders is my point. Now, it's about using leverage to say, you need my people this time. You get super delegates out moving forward in 2020.
That would be great.
That'd be big.
Legacy. And of course, they'd like to do the same thing essentially on the Republican side. More about that. Speaking of the Republican side, Donald Trump, you know, he bested the most optimistic prediction before going in by 7 points. He won in a landslide.
It's also maybe a knockout punch. I mean, let's face it. Yes,
For Ted Cruz?
Donald Trump against Ted Cruz. I mean, as you say, this was a very big win, and the Clinton people are already, in my conversations with them late last night, talking about how they're going to run against Donald Trump. They anticipate...
In a way they weren't prior to last night?
They were already anticipating it, but now they're really revving it up. In fact, some...
Because they were still worried about Bernie.
Yes, and there are, I know you've got Mayor Rudy coming up soon, and his name was invoked last night by some senior Clinton aides. What they're saying is they think running against Donald Trump, I'm not saying this is true or false, I'm not going to pick a fight with Mayor Rudy, let's be clear, but they think running against Trump is like running against Giuliani, that he's a bully, he'll say outrageous things. Again, this is not me, this is the Clinton camp talking, and that in the end, remember, Rudy Giuliani was thinking about running against Hillary Clinton for the Senate, opted not to do that. They think Trump will go through with it, of course, but they think in the end she can beat him. We'll see. The demographics may be on her side with women, for example, female voters. Donald Trump has a lot of work to do. One reason Rudy Giuliani didn't run, of course, which he'll say is, I remember he had, I think he was battling prostate cancer and he had health issues, and that was one reason he got out. The Clinton camp thinks it's because he looked at the numbers and realized he couldn't beat her, and they think that moving forward, Donald Trump is going to have a hard time beating her. We'll see. Maybe the Clinton camp is wrong. Donald Trump's going to get this great turnout if, in fact, he winds up being the nominee. That's a big if. And there's a whole new ballgame. But they feel very confident.
What is their strategy?
Their strategy is to take some of the statements Donald Trump has made about Mexicans, about Muslims, and about women, and just play that in a loop. And it's not just going to be Hillary Clinton. It's going to be David Brock and the super PACs on the left that are supporting her, running that in a loop. Donald Trump has a chance to change the narrative, though. As you've all been noting, last night there was a kind of a different tone from Donald Trump than we've seen. He has a few months now to do that.
And my feeling is that, like, you can always point to a Rocky episode and say, this is where it reminds me of something like what happens. Exactly. And this is Rocky 3. Remember, Mr. T won by intimidation. Yeah, it was the best one.
Really?
And Mr. T won, but then he got civilized in an extreme way. Donald Trump is changing, and if you're going after the Donald Trump that started running, maybe that's the wrong template. You got to watch what he said last night. Senator Cruz, Governor Kasich, we're going to move on.
So are you saying the platform will be, I pity the fool?
Possibly.
There you go. You heard it here first.
It shows you do know your Rockies.
Thank you so much. And I love how men always go there. You go to movies or sports.
Right.
Good being with you.
We're very simple as a gender.
All right.